After dinner, Melvin took a shower and was relaxing in his room when Jasmine barged in with a furious expression. "I demand to know what's going on between you and that girl, Anita," she snapped. Melvin stared at Jasmine in surprise. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I know what I'm saying, Melvin," she said sharply. "You're not even the type to speak to other women. Yet you suddenly bring a young and beautiful girl into our home and say she's the maid. Is it because she's younger than me? Do you think I'm old? Or have you just gotten tired of me?" Melvin looked at her helplessly and sighed. "My heart moved me to help her. She was being auctioned off in the black market. I couldn't turn my back and let those disgusting men get their hands on her. I did what any decent human would do." He reached for her hand. "Why would you think I'm tired of you? You're the most beautiful woman in the world to me, and you're not old. Please don't let things like this bother you." Seeing her calm down a little, he moved closer, gently cupping her cheeks. "I love you, and in just a short while, I'm going to make you Mrs. Gray." Jasmine smiled softly. "I'm sorry, Melvin. I love you too." He hugged her, then pulled back to meet her eyes that still held so much love for him. He made a silent promise to himself he would never leave her. Then he walked to the door, locked it, and came back to her. Pulling her with him onto the bed, he whispered, "Tonight, you're staying right here with me." Anita couldn't sleep. Her life felt like a dream. Just a few days ago, she had feared for her life. Now, she was sleeping in a clean, safe room, with brand new clothes, shoes, body wash, and cream. All thanks to Melvin. And his fiancée, Jasmine, was beautiful and elegant. They looked like a perfect couple. At least, that's what Anita thought. She eventually dozed off and woke up early the next morning, determined to make herself useful. After cleaning, she thought about preparing breakfast, but wasn't sure what they liked. She didn't want to wake anyone up unnecessarily, so she waited quietly in the living room. The first person to appear was Daniel. "Good morning, sir," she said quickly. "Please, what can I make for breakfast?" Daniel looked her over for a moment. "Cooking is Jasmine's territory. Don't bother trying to impress anyone. You can help her when she's in the kitchen, but don't go in there alone." He then added, "I have something better for you to do. Go get a towel and a large bowl of warm water from the bathroom. Bring it here." Not suspecting anything, Anita went to do as he asked. Meanwhile, upstairs, Melvin woke up to find Jasmine looking at him. "Good morning, my sunshine," he said with a smile. "Last night was beautiful, as always." He got up and stretched. "I've got a lot to do at the office, so I'll be leaving early. And since I know I overworked you last night, you're allowed to sleep in." Jasmine laughed quietly as he walked into the bathroom. Downstairs, Anita returned with the towel and bowl of warm water. She placed it in front of Daniel. He dipped his feet in and leaned back. "Now wash them. They are dirty." Anita blinked. "Sir, what the hell are you waiting for?" he snapped. "Aren't you a maid? Do your job." Her hands trembled slightly, but she nodded and knelt to wash his feet. She didn't want to cause trouble, not this early. As she washed, Daniel closed his eyes, a smug smile on his lips. Just then, Melvin descended the stairs and froze. "What the hell is going on here?" he asked, voice sharp. Anita and Daniel both looked up. "Anita is not your personal maid, Daniel," Melvin said coldly. "Don't ever ask her to do something like this again." Then he turned to her. "And you, I never want to see you on your knees doing that again. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," she said softly. "It won't happen again." She picked up the bowl and towel and quietly left the room. Daniel clenched his fists, seething with anger, but said nothing. Melvin shot him one last glare before heading out for work. Back in her room, Anita sat on her bed, heart still pounding. She had felt uncomfortable the moment Daniel made that request, but she had been afraid to refuse. Now, more than ever, she felt grateful to Melvin. Despite being a maid, he had treated her like a human being, with dignity and kindness. Whatever little crush she had on Daniel had completely died. He wasn't who she had thought he was. He wasn't like his brother at all. A few hours later, Jasmine called her down and gave her breakfast. Anita thanked her and took the food back to her room. She knew Jasmine didn't like her, but still, she was being treated respectfully. She made up her mind to do everything she could to win Jasmine over. After finishing her meal, she had nothing else to do. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of the girls who hadn't survived that night at the river. She wished she could get justice for them, but she could barely stand up for herself. All she could do now was hope. Eventually, she drifted to sleep. When she woke up, the sun was already beginning to set. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten lunch and wondered if it would be rude to ask. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Assuming it was Jasmine, she opened it quickly. But standing in front of her was Daniel. Before she could say a word, he pushed her gently back into the room and shut the door. What are you?" she started, eyes wide with fear. He unbuckled his belt slowly and stepped forward. Anita's body froze in terror. She turned to run, but he grabbed her and clamped a hand over her mouth. "There's no need to scream," he whispered in her ear. "Jasmine is out. It's just you and me, baby." Daniel began to tear at Anita's clothes. She wore a peach-colored gown Melvin had gotten her the day before. He yanked at the top, exposing her white bra. Panic surged through Anita, and she bit his hand. When he yelped and pulled back, she screamed and began to cry. He grabbed the lower part of her gown, ready to rip it apart, when suddenly someone yanked him backward. It was Melvin. He had returned home much earlier than usual. Before Daniel could even react, Melvin landed a hard punch to his face. He staggered. Another punch. Then a third. Daniel collapsed to the floor, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Jasmine burst into the room, her eyes immediately falling on Anita, who was curled into a ball in the corner of the bed, shaking, crying, her gown torn and her hair wild. She looked at Daniel on the ground and understood immediately what had happened. "I'm so disappointed in you," she said coldly. Melvin was still breathing heavily, eyes wild with rage. He had promised Anita safety, promised to protect her, and that promise had been nearly shattered by his own brother. He shoved Jasmine aside, grabbed Daniel by the collar, and hauled him to his feet. Dragging him out the door, he practically threw him into the hallway. Then he turned back to the room. Jasmine followed Daniel out to confront him. Meanwhile, Melvin removed his jacket and draped it gently over Anita's shoulders. "I'm so sorry this happened, Anita," he said quietly. "Please don't cry. I promise you, it will never happen again." Still shaking, Anita looked up at him through watery eyes. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Daniel slammed his bedroom door shut. But Jasmine, furious, kicked it back open. "What the hell were you trying to do?" Daniel scoffed. "Oh, please. You don't get to act righteous. You're the one always clinging to Melvin, buttering him up, playing the perfect fiancé. Can't you see that girl is a threat to your position?" He crossed his arms. "I was looking out for you, trying to get her under control so she wouldn't ruin everything. And now you're turning on me." Jasmine flinched at the sound of Melvin's door closing nearby. "This conversation isn't over," she said coldly, and walked away. Melvin, hearing her, didn't respond. He walked out of the house and drove off into the night. Anita, still shaken, locked her bedroom door the moment she was alone. Her heart was pounding. She kept thinking of how close she'd come to disaster. If Melvin hadn't arrived when he did, she didn't even want to finish the thought. From now on, she would stay alert. If ever she was alone in the house with Daniel, she would lock herself in and wait for someone else to return. But as she recalled Jasmine confronting Daniel and calling him out, she felt a flicker of warmth. Maybe Jasmine was like Melvin, kind and protective. Later that night, Melvin sat at a bar with his friend Terry, nursing a bottle of beer. "Daniel is the bane of my existence," he said bitterly. "One of these days, I'll cut him off completely." He got home late. The lights in Jasmine's room were already off. He checked on Anita too, but her door was locked. Assured that everyone was safe, he went to his own room. He lay awake, his thoughts swirling. Why was Daniel like this? He had spent so many years trying to manage his anger, therapy, meditation, even anger management classes. Yet Daniel always found a way to push his limits. At 29, Daniel still refused to work or do anything productive. Melvin had tried everything to help him. But maybe some people were just beyond saving.